Okay, welcome everybody here and online. Do we have anyone online now?
Not on this Zoom right now.
Okay, so we're waiting for people to file in there. Okay, so we'll begin with introductions. Please.
Yeah. Hi, Stephen Chiza, he, him, Ward 8 resident and crossing guard at South Willard and College.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah, that's me. Me. Thank you.
Well, thanks for what you're doing there.
It's fun.
Christian Berry, my pronouns are she, they. I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Manager with the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging.
Tom Carroll, Ward 8 resident, Ward 8 NPA, steering committee member, currently facilitating these meetings. He, him pronouns.
I'm Amy Malinowski. I live on South Williams. I use she, her pronouns. And yeah, I think that's it for now.
Hi, my name is Ita, they, them pronouns, Ward 8 resident. Check.
Yeah, no, I.
Oh, there's Ella, I see her.
America's gonna be a little late. America's gonna be a little late.
Oh, yeah, I saw him, he mentioned.
Barbara, right?
Yeah.
Do you introduce yourself?
Would you mind when you speak, introducing yourselves?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Monroe Zakaris. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff for the Mayor. So I'm here tonight. Unfortunately, the Chief Administrative Officer, Catherine Schad, is out sick, and the Mayor is unable as well. So I'm here representing them both to talk about the tax increase.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jen, do you want to, Barbara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Your pronouns, and I'm the NPA coordinator for the city.
And Charlie, everybody knows you, but do you pitch in here too?
Yeah, so I'm Charlie G and I work for CCTV. I'm on the board to NPA. Thank you. Seriously. Thanks.
So we usually begin our agenda with public forum. And I'll ask, is there anyone who has anything to say? And what I will ask is that we keep in mind the time constraints, that we want to move along with our agenda. Just be mindful of that. Not to you personally, but just.
It's a good morning for me.
So please, Edith.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to make a statement supporting the REIB charter change. My name is Ita Meno. I have lived and worked in Burlington for decades and more than 20 years serving the city and her residents. I wanted to say that I strongly support making the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging a chartered department. Equity needs permanence, not permission. Chartering REIB protects racial equity work from political shifts and budget cycles, ensuring it remains a core city responsibility, not a temporary initiative. Independence strengthens accountability. REIB must be able to examine systems, policies, and outcomes honestly and across the city and its departments. Being chartered gives it that independence to surface hard truths and drive real change. Equity work is bigger than human resources. HR focuses on personnel, compliance, and internal operations. REIB focuses on systems, community impact, and long-term equity outcomes. Keeping them separate ensures neither mission is diluted. Trust depends on clarity. When equity concerns are clearly distinct from personnel matters, employees and community members are more likely to speak openly, engage early, and participate in solutions. Finally, representation matters at every level of government. REIB plays a critical role in ensuring city leadership, decision-making bodies, and policies reflect the people who live here. Chartering the department signals that belonging is not optional in Burlington, it is foundational. Thank you.
I guess, well, +1 to everything you generously shared. And then also, I guess, next meeting, we'll warn a vote to nominate me to join the steering committee. And anybody else who might hear this in a replay and wants to join too, reach out.
Thank you, Amy. I neglected to mention your nomination or your eventual nomination. I'm sorry about that. As important as it is. Okay, so and I should say that right now I'm the steering committee. Ryan Nick had been facilitating. I don't know his status at this point. I don't think he's publicly declared. I'm hoping he may show up tonight and make some comments, but we'll have to see. Amy and I have met informally to move NPA business forward for the ward. And we'll continue to do that until we formally nominate and accept her onto the committee. So thanks for that, Amy. You see why I need her, right? For many reasons, but this one. Okay, I think if there's no one else to comment, we'll move on to councilor updates. Ally, are you there? Yes, okay. Hey, Ally, let me just say to begin with, we're waiting for Marek. He is coming. So if you could begin and we'll fit him in wherever we need to as we go. So,
Great.
thanks.
Yeah. And he and I, I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I think this is the first one I've had to be remote for. I much prefer being with you all in person, but have some childcare juggling this evening. So a couple quick updates, and Merrick did tell me, can you all hear me okay? Because I hear my.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I will ignore the echo back to myself that I'm hearing. I did touch base with Merrick. He told me he's not sure quite when he'll arrive. So we know the updates to share. Hopefully he might have some more to share about, but I will do my best to share what I know he wanted you all to hear as well. The first is that, and it sounds like there's going to be a longer update this evening, but we're entering budget season for the city. And thank you, Jen, for being here tonight to talk about that a bit more and what that means for our ballot. We're looking at another big budget gap this year that we need to figure out how to fill, roughly $10 to $12 million. I'm really appreciative that the mayor and council are already working closely together along with city departments, to really think creatively about what we can do this year to address this. So it's going to be a lot of what dominates our work and our conversations between now and when the budget passes at the end of June. There's not a whole lot more to report now. I know that more will be said this evening, I'm sure, but each department has been working on what a 5% and a 10% reduction would look like as we think about where there are cost saving opportunities. We're not really leaving any stone unturned. And in addition, and as Jen will be sharing in a little bit, we're also looking at potentially bringing, the council will vote on it next week, a public safety tax forward onto the ballot for voters to vote on, a 5-cent tax, which would close our budget gap by about $3 million to support police and fire. So stay tuned on that. I'm happy to answer any questions I can now, but just know a lot is still in flux. We're more just beginning the process of having a lot of conversations. And I'm just tremendously grateful for all the hearts and minds that are working on it to think about how we tackle this challenge. So that's one update. The next update is that I think we're all thinking about housing. So the council passed a resolution 2 meetings ago, last week, not this week, to look at what are the barriers to infill development. So not the big, huge developments, but how do we start building more housing all throughout the community, ADUs and things like that. And alongside that, the mayor and CEDO and our Office of City Planning have created a robust housing strategy that was announced last week, which I have pulled up here to talk a little bit more about. I think, housing, public safety, affordability, these are the things you hear us talk about all the time. And so this is kind of trying to tackle the housing issue. So one is activating the neighborhood code. So this is very much aligned with what council passed last week as well. So prior to Moreau Moreau's last term ending, right at the tail end of his administration, we revitalized our neighborhood code, which allowed for the creation of more housing. But the implementation roadmap is what we didn't ever have figured out at that time. So part of what we're trying to do now is really understand what are the barriers to implementing, to building our housing density, to adding more homes. And so that's going to be a priority of both the administration and the council. Revitalizing tools like our inclusionary zoning ordinance and our housing trust fund. We've been using these for many, many decades. We've been a leader really in the country in affordable housing, but the mechanisms we have in place have not sort of innovated at the pace that other cities have been innovating to really think about how to use these funding mechanisms in new ways. So we're going to be diving deep into our inclusionary zoning rules and regulations, as well as how we're using our housing trust fund to build more affordable housing. So that'll be one, the second pillar. And the third pillar is thinking about how we can pursue more housing through public-private partnerships. We have a lot of city-owned land. We have a lot of folks interested in building and developing here in Burlington. So how can we embark in some public-private partnerships using some of the land that we have in partnership with the folks who are experts in building housing? And one example of this is the conversation we're having around Memorial Block, which directly impacts Ward 8. So that's the block with the firehouse and the old Memorial Auditorium and that tattoo parlor. The other side of it is Fletcher Free Library. There was a presentation on the council meeting, I think 2 or 3 meetings ago, with the folks who we've been in a pre-development agreement with, private developers, to build out that block to be housing. I believe hotel space is also in the plans and a bunch of community space. So and that would be a public-private partnership because it's city-owned land. And then we would work with a developer to build it out. So that's one example. We want to continue to lean on mechanisms like that to be creative in how we're expediently tackling this housing crisis that we're facing. So I wanted to make sure to give that update. And then I know Merrick wanted to make sure to share the progress that's happening on the UVM dorm resolution. So the council unanimously supported a resolution probably in December, I think, to take another look at how we're enforcing our minimum housing standards at our college, with our college partners here in Burlington. So Champlain and UVM. Obviously, UVM is by far the biggest fish in that sea and houses a lot of students, thousands of students. And there have been complaints over the years, and a lot of them came before the council about the quality of housing. And so the council's taking a look, and right now it's sitting in the ordinance committee at what can we do to be working in partnership with our university partners to ensure that their housing standards are up to code, and also that students have a way to be contacting our city officials. Is that Merrick? Hi, Merrick. You came in right as I was talking about your agenda item. Anyways, before Merrick adds anything more, I did want to say that part of that resolution included touring UVM dorms. I was able to go on a tour over the holiday break of, I think, 4 or 5 different buildings on campus, each of different quality, of different age, of different like stage in the renovation process. And it was quite interesting. And to UVM's credit, they have already begun implementing some changes. For example, on every floor, there's like a 24-inch by 36-inch sticky on the wall with big QR code for like how to report maintenance concerns and sort of what the follow-up process looks like. So it was nice to be able to see with our own eyes sort of some of what's going on there. And we organically like ran into some RAs and some students who were living on campus through the break. So I was really appreciative for the chance to do that. And Merrick, I'll let you take it from there. I want to pipe in, I'm really sorry, and say there's no sound coming through on the Zoom from that microphone for some reason.
What about now?
Yes, it's working.
Great. Merrick Broderick, Ward 8 City Councilor. Sorry for being late. Ally, did you talk about the ordinance committee meeting on the resolution?
Very high level.
Great. So part of the resolution stipulated that UVM and Champlain College would come to the ordinance committee and this in the council and the administration and our colleges and universities are going to be sitting down, opening up our housing code, talking about what their processes are, where on both the city side and the university side, there's issues with the process that need to be fixed for the sake of the students. And I could not go on the tour, unfortunately, but as Ally said, it was from what I heard, it was clear that that change in certain ways was already starting, which was great to hear. And the ordinance committee meeting also reflected that. UVM specifically identified issues with their reporting software, where students would report an issue, and I think the biggest problem that they had mentioned was that students would not get any sort of confirmation that their issue had gone into the system. They wouldn't get a timeline for when that issue would be resolved. And things of that sort. And so UVM said that it is working on making fixes to that software. It's called Plan On, I believe. And the UVM Student Tenant Union was also there and provided their feedback. And I think based off of this was just the first meeting. I feel very optimistic that change can be made. And I was really happy to see that. And Bill Ward from the Department of Permitting and Inspections was also there and brought some templates for UVM and Champlain to use to certify with the city that certain points of the housing code have been met. There's still more work to be done on that. But yeah, overall, I'm hopeful and optimistic. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the counselors or?
Question. Hey, Merrick. Is this still in front of the ordinance committee? Is it still in the ordinance committee?
Yes.
When's the next ordinance committee meeting?
I can look it up quickly if you don't know it off the top of your head, Merrick.
I do not. That would be great. But yeah, this is definitely going to be an ongoing. It's going to be more than 2 meetings worth of deep dive. At least I hope so. And Councilor Bergman told me it would. So
Is it going to require a charter change?
No, I think at most it may require ordinance changes at most, but we haven't gotten to the solutions phase yet fully.
So it looks like the next meeting is February 6th at 2 p.m. I think I just saw. And it is on, if you go on Civic Clerk, you can look it up. You can just, there's a drop down where you can sort by ordinance and you'll see, but it looks like it's February 6th.
And I'm trying to remember what Councilor Bergman said on Tuesday at our council meeting when he updated this. I don't think they are covering UVM at the very next one. I think it will be the meeting after that, which is also in the month of February, I believe.
Yes.
I could be mistaken though.
February 19th at 4:30 p.m. So yeah, I think if you wanted to come speak at public forum, either would probably be fine. But if you wanted to go on the night that was on the agenda or the day that was on the agenda, I would just keep an eye on the agendas, as Merrick said.
Does anyone have an update on the housing situation for people who are living outdoors these days? Especially when we're looking at a massive Arctic situation.
Merrick, do you want to jump in? You want me
I
to
can
share a
also
couple
speak to
things?
that.
Good.
Jen from the mayor's office is here, so
Just going to speak just briefly to the Arctic temperatures. Can you hear me okay, Ally? Okay.
Yes.
Just that the city in partnership with CVOEO, the Champlain, Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity. We're opening up the extreme cold weather shelter this weekend. So it's going to be open for 4 evenings in a row. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, opening up at 5 p.m., closing at 8 a.m. for each activation. And as far as I understand, this is the longest stretch of opening the cold weather shelter that we've had. I think the longest stretch from last year was 3 nights in a row. So, it's a pretty heavy lift, but the team is great. And so this is a team made up of the fire department. So Chief Curtin, who is the chief of the fire department, he is the city's emergency kind of response manager. And so he makes the call when the temperatures reach the threshold, which is 4 hours in a 24 period that are at -10 degrees, including wind chill, and taking into account things like ice and snow. So he makes the call. CVOEO partners with the mayor's office and with the parks department to get the Miller Center up and running. This is where the cold weather shelter is held. And CVOEO staffs and runs the shelter. And, of course, the police department is also, present and helpful at times if needed during that time. So that's the update on the cold weather.
So do you think there's adequate space for everyone?
Yes.
Question. And then the second question would be, is the state of Vermont helping you in any way?
So in terms of the capacity, I think it can hold 80 to 90 people so far in the activation. So we've had 3 activations in December and early January, and each time it was about 40 to 50 people and a few pets. So this is low barrier shelter, so folks can bring their pets if they want. So I know that there were some dogs at each of the times. This one, the temperatures are very cold, and I think, as it gets later into the season, probably the capacity will go up. But even last year, they got pretty close to the max, but I don't think they've never had a situation of needing to turn people away or anything like that. In terms of support from the state, the extreme cold weather shelter is funded by state funding, which is so CVOEO operates this through, the state, through a state grant. What this does mean is that the number of activations are going to be dictated by funding. And so there have been questions in the past about why hasn't the shelter opened at 0 degrees instead of -10 degrees. And of course, it feels arbitrary because 0 degrees is insanely cold and no one should be outside at that temperature either. Unfortunately, we have only a set amount of funding from the state. And I think last year we came pretty close to maxing that out. So it's almost like if you activate at a warmer temperature, you're using up funding, and then you'll have to hope that throughout the rest of the season, temperatures, this is a really big cold spell of 4 days in a row, and we don't know what the rest of the season is going to look like. So we need to make sure that we have the funding for those days. So we do get funding from the state. It is insufficient. And, the mayor's administration and councilors and many, elected officials and city partners have been, advocating more and more with the state to step in more, to provide more funding. UVMMC is getting more involved now because the emergency department is, getting a lot of folks coming in with nowhere else to go. So it's definitely a crisis. This happens every winter. And I think, this is really kind of getting to a breaking point. So it's getting more attention, and shelter is at the top of the mayor's legislative priorities. And it's definitely something that a lot of people are working on, and it's top of everyone's mind.
If I might offer just 2 bright spots during what is an incredibly challenging, and I'm glad you asked this question, situation. It's heartbreaking. One is that we did have the COTS new way station open in December, which has added some shelter bed capacity. It's a higher barrier shelter, but my understanding is it's filling. And so we have had some additional shelter beds open in the community. And also on February 1st, Jen, I don't know if that's still the date that's on track or not, but we're going to have a 12-bed emergency recovery shelter open on Pearl Street. So that's in partnership with CVOEO as well. And so that's also a big deal. So that'll be higher barrier in that folks have to be actively in recovery or not using substances, but We are going to have an additional 12-bed emergency shelter in this community, and it can't come soon enough.
Thank you. Should we move on to our next item on the agenda? That would be you guys. You would introduce yourself again, if you don't mind.
Sure. Again, I'm Christian Berry. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Manager from the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Can I go back to the first slide? Yeah, thank you. So thank you for making space for this conversation tonight to learn a little bit more about the proposed charter change to add the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging as a permanent part of city government. I just said my name, so I won't do that again, but I will just talk quickly about the 4 points we hope to cover tonight. So the first is to discuss what is the proposed charter change, what are the voters being asked to decide, a little bit more clarification about what the REIB does and what are the implications of this change for Burlington. So on March 3rd, Burlingtonians will cast their votes to decide whether or not to add the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging to the city's charter. The city charter is a foundational document that outlines the organization, powers, and functions of our city government, including defining what parts of city government are permanent. While equity and inclusion efforts have been a fundamental part of the city of Burlington's initiatives since the early 2000s, incorporating the REIB into the city's charter makes these efforts a permanent part of the city government's infrastructure. To help inform your decision, I'm just going to briefly explain our work and its significance within city government thus far. So diversity, equity, and inclusion are practical tools for evaluating how well our systems work. They help us look at how city services, policies, and workplaces are designed, who they reach, and whether or not they work effectively for the people who rely on them. This is about systems and outcomes, not individual beliefs. Burlington is the second most diverse city in our state, with residents of different languages, abilities, ages, incomes, and lived experiences. Recognizing this helps the city understand that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work. Equity means recognizing that people start from different places and that fair access sometimes requires different approaches, like accessible buildings, captioned videos, flexible work arrangements, or multiple ways to engage with city services. These are practical design choices, not ideological ones. Inclusion focuses on whether people feel welcomed, informed, and able to participate in their city. When we apply this DEI lens, city systems work better and serve the whole community more effectively. So some examples of how the REIB works across city government and with stakeholders to ensure city services are effective, fair, accessible, and informed by the needs of the people who rely on them. This is not an exhaustive list, but first, supporting city departments in the development, coordination, and implementation of programs and services to ensure consistency and accessibility. We provide training, education, and guidance for city staff, boards and commissions, community stakeholders, and we work closely with the Burlington School District. We create structured and informal ways for community members to engage directly with their city government. A couple of examples of this include our Trusted Community Voices, which represent 7 of our city's immigrant and refugee communities, bringing lived experiences and community insights to inform projects, programs, and policy implementation. We also engage in community conversations on topics impacting our communities, such as partnering with the special assistant to end homelessness to engage community members in this important discussion. We also hold monthly REIB City Council committee meetings where constituents have an opportunity to engage directly with city councilors and REIB staff. So why this matters? Inclusive governance. The city of Burlington is one of the most diverse cities in the state. And as such, Burlington has a responsibility to prioritize work that fosters inclusivity by reflecting the diverse identities, experiences, and needs of all community members. It also strengthens economic opportunity. So studies show that diverse and inclusive environments contribute to innovation, creativity, and productivity, enhancing the overall economic vitality of the city, creating job growth and attracting new businesses. This also enhances community well-being and community resilience. By addressing systemic barriers and fostering an inclusive environment, we create a stronger social fabric that promotes trust, collaboration, and belonging. This approach not only benefits individuals from diverse backgrounds, but also enhances the quality of life for the entire community, leading to a more engaged, resilient, and thriving city where everyone can participate fully and feel valued. So I also want to take a moment to provide a little bit of budget clarity as it relates to the office. So this vote asks whether the work of the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging should be a permanent core function of city government. This isn't new work for Burlington. For decades, city departments have been addressing equity, access, and inclusion. The REIB simply provides coordination, expertise, and continuity for work that already exists. Decisions about staffing and funding remain part of the regular budget process and are separate from whether the office is established in the charter. So for a little context, the REIB makes up about 0.7% of the city's general fund budget and has never exceeded 1%. Like all general fund city departments, the REIB is currently planning for a 5 to 10% budget reduction. Establishing this work as permanent helps ensure coordination, consistency, and clarity, especially during tight budget years, so city systems continue to work effectively for the entire community. That's it. That's the.
It's awesome. Thank you.
So are you coordinating in any way with folks?
We're not coordinating with Winooski.
Or exchange of ideas or approaches, that sort of thing?
We have, I don't know if the Office of Equity for the Burlington School District probably is, but we work closely with that office, with BSD. Yeah.
With BSD.
There's a statewide coordination of equity efforts too, right?
So at the state level,
Yeah, what's it called?
the Office of Racial Equity? Are you talking about Susanna's office?
I'm not talking about Susanna's office, but she has a committee where
Oh, Ideal.
Ideal, there we go.
Yeah, so we are part of Ideal. So we do some coordination statewide as a part of that group. So that is where we do have an opportunity to exchange ideas and collaborate a little bit more. And also is a broader reach. It reaches the entire state.
I see.
Yeah.
Any other questions or? Okay, we can move on. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Now for the fun presentation, so tax increase. All right. So I'm gonna just offer the caveat that I am not a financial expert, though I've been in these conversations for a while. So if anyone has a question that I'm unable to answer, I'm happy to grab your email and follow up afterwards. So good to see you, Eden. My computer's letting me out. Okay, I'm just going to read from there for now because my computer is taking a while. So I think, so what Catherine, okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Okay. I don't know. I mean, I have the right slides. I'm just going to go off the screen. So usually what Catherine walks through in these presentations is just kind of how we're approaching the fiscal year 2027 budgeting process, because that will lay set the stage for essentially where we are with the structural budget gap and then how the proposed tax increase plays a role here. And as Ali mentioned, the proposed tax increase has passed approval from the Board of Finance this past week. And so it's being presented to the City Council this coming Monday on January 26th for a vote. And essentially what happens is the City Council will vote to approve placing the question on the town meeting day ballot for voters to approve. So that's where we are in this process. So starting with FY27, so one thing to know about the city is that something like most departments, about 90% or more are personnel costs. So these are a core piece of what we need to look at when we start the budgeting process. So started with, so in FY26, this personnel budget was 73 million. We added 2 new firefighters per the fire union contract. We also have to add in contractually negotiated cost of living adjustments. So these are for the unions. So the fire union, 7%, the police union, 4.75%. AFSCME negotiations are beginning. So we can't share that figure just yet. Typically, the standard practice has been that all non-union staff get a cost of living adjustment that is the same as AFSCME. So that's kind of, so starting with FY26, we start to factor in these pieces. And then you include basically promotions for eligible employees, healthcare costs, which as we all know is out of control in most parts of the country, certainly in Vermont. So these costs rise rapidly every year. So we're looking at about 10%, and this is an estimate. And just so you know, all estimates that we have, we're trying to be as realistic as possible. So almost estimating in the slightly worst case scenario direction than in the best case, because we'd rather be safe. Employer retirement costs by about 5%, which is the initial estimate, and then increases in workers' compensation insurance costs. The reason that these are estimates is that we are still very early in the budgeting process for Burlington. Typically in the past, this has begun kind of like in the spring. And we are trying to start this process much, much earlier because, and actually almost kind of in alignment with the school district budget process. And so we are still very early. We're trying to engage staff and counselors early. And so some of this information we're estimating because we're going to sort it out in the coming months. And so then we have inflation. We've got some obligations, which is basically setting aside money to purchase 9 new vehicles that are basically on the urgent, dire need list. 6 are for police and fire, remaining are for parks. The reason is that essentially, as we've heard with like the issue of deferred maintenance with buildings, we have the same issue with the city fleet, basically. And so, every year things keep getting pushed and pushed. And then, you could end up in a situation where you have to, where basically the mechanic costs of the repairs tend to become almost more than just buying the vehicle. And so once you get to that point, it's time to replace. So we are at that phase right now. And an example that the mayor likes to share is that she recently went on a ride along with the BPD, and there were many things within the car that were broken or not working correctly. So this is definitely an issue, and it's something that just to give context to why that's on a list during a difficult budget year, trying to do the necessary things that we have to do. Okay, so those are all of our things that we need to pay. So what kind of revenue do we have? Sadly, the grand list, not much. The growth is at about 1% annually right now. This is largely due to, well, there are a lot of reasons for this, though. I know TIF financing has something to do with it. I am not going to pretend to be an expert on this, but, in the waterfront TIF districts, some of those costs go to paying that debt. And so we don't really get to tap into the full value of our grant list for about another 20 years or so. So unfortunately, our growth is not, provides some revenue, but not as much as we would hope. And then something that we have had that is now kind of, this is a large driver of where we are with the structural budget gap, which I'll get to in a moment. But in the past, essentially, we've added for about the past 10 years, I think there have been almost 100 full-time positions added. Many of these, there were like one-time or temporary revenues that were used to fund some of these. And so as everyone knows, the federal funding climate is contracting significantly. A lot of municipalities throughout the country are losing significant amounts of money from both just federal money in general under the current presidential administration, but also COVID era funding is drying up. So some of this from FY26 is 1.2 million of ARPA funding. So this is the last tranche of that, or that was the last tranche of that for police and fire salaries. There was 650K in one-time collection of delinquent property taxes, gross receipts. And so, since that was collected in FY26, there's probably not a lot of that to be collected this fiscal year, the next fiscal year. Basically, and then also just correcting some of the estimates from the past that were probably over budgeted, et cetera. So essentially, all of this adds up to about 4 million of city revenue that it had in FY26 that it will not have in FY27. So essentially, we need to find a new source of revenue for this or cut this amount in the expenses side. So this all leads us to essentially a budget gap that's estimated to be between 10 and 12 million. And with the city's budget is about 107 million. So this is a gap of about 10%. So now what we're doing is, now that we've kind of laid out the problem, the mayor's administration has been working very carefully with department heads, city staff, engaging counselors, and beginning to engage the public as well on, what are the options that we have on the table? What is the city exploring? Trying to literally look under every couch cushion, every stone, every creative solution. The mayor is even engaging city employees, has a survey out for ideas from staff, encouraging department heads to engage staff, really trying to get as many creative ideas on the table as possible. So, and as I mentioned, this is not a unique position. I mean, if you look at the news, if you chat with elected officials in other municipalities, everyone is talking about the same thing, really struggling financially with meeting needs, with less funding in general, and with inflation, healthcare costs rising. These are issues that a lot of places are dealing with. So, as a part of what the mayor has been working on during her term is trying to kind of what she calls right-sized government, essentially to a little bit course correct here about kind of where are we as a city right now? What can we reasonably sustain? What can residents sustain from an affordability standpoint? And just trying to kind of get this so that we're not dealing with these structural budget gaps year after year. And so I think we can go to the next one. So one of the options on the table is a 5-cent increase to the police and fire tax. This would raise about 3 million toward the projected gap. For a little bit of context, basically the current police and fire tax is projected to raise about 6.4 million. The budget for those departments are 39 million. So this is it's a tax that really doesn't cover a whole lot. And the increase in the compensation and benefits that we talked about on that first slide, that's expected to be about a 3 million increase from FY26 to FY27. So this increase in the tax would at least help cover that piece. But, as you can see, police and fire tax only raises about 16% of the cost for these services. Another thing that we just want to note is as both Ali and Christian mentioned, the departments are tasked with looking at 5 to 10% reduction scenarios of kind of what can we do here to cut costs. That is not really possible for the police and fire departments because those are essential personnel, already understaffed in some ways. So those departments are not are not contributing those scenarios in quite the same way. So what this means, so this is when it gets, I'll try my best to explain. The municipal kind of general tax rate is made up of about 15 or more splinter taxes. So all of these little taxes that raise money for various things, parks, police, fire, retirement, et cetera. And so this particular tax would require voter approval. And there are two splinter taxes. One is retirement, and I can't remember what the other one is. These basically adjust up and down every year, just kind of based on inflation and things, and it's not subject to voter approval. So that's just kind of, that's going to happen regardless. So that's I think about 3.6%. So combining that, which is already going to happen, with the proposed police and fire tax would bring the tax increase to about 9.4%. And, you know, the mayor really is committed and worked very hard to keep that tax increase under a double-digit tax increase for affordability for the residents. So, you know, it's always tough to propose a tax increase, but try to do only what was absolutely necessary. And so in terms of thinking about, you know, kind of how this particular piece factors into the overall solutions for the budget gap. So the mayor and CAO Shad are thinking about this as almost kind of like a three-legged stool with three pillars, which is raising revenue, right-sizing government, and realizing strategic opportunities that maybe we hadn't realized before for revenue. So raising revenue, that's where the police and fire tax go in. So like I said, that should raise about $3 million. There is the utilization of one-time revenues, which is about $2 million. So this is basically dedicated tax balances that we can kind of cobble together and use in different ways. We can estimate that basically enhancing collections of parking tickets, ambulance fees, building permits, we can probably make up about $1 million with that as a conservative estimate. So those are kind of the three primary revenue options that we have right now for FY27. In terms of right-sizing government, so as noted, all departments except for police and fire are looking at 5 to 10% reductions. That is expected to net about $3 million. And of course, that's going to do, I mean, right now, you know, everyone, the mayor and CAO Shot are working with different departments to figure out, you know, it's a long process of figuring out, you know, what are the proposals, what are essential services, you know, what happened during the budgeting season last year, what are you looking to in the future? And so trying to balance that among all departments. So this is a long process that takes time. It's why we don't have an answer to that right now. I mean, I believe that in April, they're called budget nights. All departments will be presenting their budgets. So as you can imagine, it just takes a lot of time to sort these things out. So we're kind of actively in that process now. But basically what we're hoping and aiming for is that the combination of these reductions across all departments will net about $3 million. We are looking to create a voluntary furlough program, which we have been reaching out to city staff to see their interest in. And, you know, we're trying to encourage, of course, folks to consider it as an option here. Based on interest that we've seen so far, it will probably be a small contribution to the gap, but nevertheless, every contribution helps. So right now we're looking at about 0.2 million there, but we'll see. Again, it's still in the early stages of getting that moving. In terms of realizing strategic opportunities, you know, this is also a bit within the housing strategy. Well, actually, I'm not sure if this particular piece is for housing. Forgive me, I'm forgetting. In any case, essentially looking at city property that is vacant or not being well used. So this could be for parking, you know, these kinds of things. And so selling that property, again, as a strategic way of raising money. And we are still in the very early stages of figuring that out, but hoping that maybe that could yield about $1 million based on what we understand of vacant and underutilized city property. So essentially, all of this gets us to about 10.2 million, which would be, you know, on the lower end of that structural budget gap. So again, just as a summary here, just of what the gap is, trying to utilize a balanced approach, trying to use as many options as possible. So of course, there's a tax increase for city residents, but really trying to keep it to the minimal amount that we can to reasonably, you know, close this gap. And yeah, so the residents assuming that city council approves the tax increase, if they do, then voters will be able to weigh in on this on town meeting day. And again, departments will be presenting their budgets in April. And then the vote on the budget is in June.
Thank you.
Any technical questions? I'll have to answer later.
I have a quick question. Well, first comment, I think you're doing the rounds and iterating on this presentation. And I saw it at Ward 5, and this was very helpful. I think the new narrative was helping me wrap my brain around it.
Yes, there's something which Barbara is of course helping with as well, as we call it the NPA Roadshow. So all the NPAs, so folks from REIB, the mayor, and CAO Shad will be attending all NPAs to talk about ballot items and answer questions. So this is a part of that.
I don't know how much this would get us, but in the spirit of ideas, I feel like this would have broad bipartisan support. Blight properties that people are just sitting on, can we increase the fees?
That's an excellent question. And actually, so the mayor has convened, or has, what I should say is has tasked our Director of Permitting and Inspections, Bill Ward, has tasked him with kind of creating an interdepartmental task force to look at what we call problem properties. So these could be vacant properties, uninhabited, or they could be blighted properties, as you say, that, are structurally unsound, unsafe, eyesores, etc. And so kind of thinking about, okay, how can we address these in a more strategic way, in a faster way, certainly in the downtown area, but really all over the city. And the short answer is it is definitely something that the city is working on. And actually over the past 2 months, Bill Ward has been convening that group, and they've been having good action items after each time. So that does have forward movement. Unfortunately, the long and not satisfying answer is that a lot of those processes are dictated by law and ordinance. And so you have to go through various legal steps in order to even get to the point of being able to collect revenue. And sometimes you might need to take someone to court, et cetera. So yes, in the long term, for FY27, unlikely to net much money for that. Simply because of the legal process.
Yeah.
But it's a great question.
As we see year after year, the city is asking the taxpayers to pay more and more in increases, et cetera. So is there any kind of a strategic plan for trying to increase the tax base of the city so that people can look forward at some point to a little bit of relief in the future?
Absolutely. A big piece of that is growing our grand list, which means more housing. And so, as Ali mentioned earlier during her updates, a couple weeks ago, the mayor unveiled her 2026 housing strategy. The councilors also introduced a resolution, as Ali said. We have our blighted properties group. So this is kind of an all hands on deck moment of trying to figure out how do we activate our housing in a different way than what we've done in the past. So, the history of Burlington is as an affordable housing leader. We've typically, built more affordable housing than our peer cities for a long time, and that has stalled in recent years. And, a lot of cities are grappling with this. A lot of these things are structural issues that are not specific to Burlington. So a lot of this is kind of like, okay, how do you maintain our legacy, our focus on affordability, our values, but how can you reform them, bring them to this moment, activate them in new ways? So, as Ali mentioned, looking at our inclusionary zoning, looking at the Housing Trust Fund, looking at neighborhood code, looking at, public-private partnerships to develop city land strategically for affordable housing and land that's maintained as public assets. So really trying to increase the housing, of course, just getting more housing on the market, but also doing so in a way that truly reflects housing that the community wants and needs, so that it is still supporting affordability and keeping that affordability at a pace that the community needs. Because of course, just creating housing that is private, market rate housing that's really expensive does not help that situation. And so, really trying to accelerate housing, but keeping it with long-term affordability as that North Star. And So that is honestly one of the biggest ways that you can increase the tax bases through that. And of course, still continuing to work on various pieces of affordability, protections for renters, for low and moderate income homeowners, trying to do that work municipally, doing it at the state level. So the mayor has, various initiatives going on in those areas. And of course, those take time, particularly at the state level. Unfortunately, there isn't much you can do with tax policy that doesn't require a city charter change. And as we know, many of those have been sitting at the state level for a long time for a variety of reasons. A lot of them, the mayor is convening lobbyists and state legislators on a regular basis to try to get forward movement on what's already there, and trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to be moving on next at the state level? So unfortunately, it is a long process, but it is definitely one that a lot of folks are thinking about and doing a lot of forward movement on.
Okay, so another thing, so to try to wrap this up with a positive note. Okay, so the people of Burlington are being asked this place is very expensive to live in. So either from the mayor's office or from city councilors, what are some of the reasons that people who are living in Burlington, why do they want to live here? So what does the mayor's office or the city councilors think is really good about Burlington so that people are willing to pay higher taxes, et cetera, to live here? Think of anything? I just want to end it on a positive note.
Well, I know that I've been speaking a lot the past several minutes, so I'd like to offer it to Ally and Merrick first, if you would like to comment, and then I'm happy to comment after.
Tom, were you asking like what's in it for people to vote to support this? Did I hear you correctly?
That was Charlie.
Charlie was
Charlie,
essentially
I'm so sorry.
That was Charlie. It's the
basically
background.
saying, why should people come live here and pay all these taxes? What's the big deal about Burlington?
I mean, I have lots I could say, but I don't want to just jump in if Merrick, do you want to say anything first?
I mean, there's a lot. Just step outside, stay warm, but step outside and look around. This is a beautiful city. It's one of the I'd say one of the meccas of northern New England. This is a beautiful old city with beautiful people, and we're doing a lot of amazing things. And to people who want to come to Burlington but see those numbers, that's what I would say to them. Come see it for yourself. To people who are currently living here and are grappling with these votes, I would say that fortunately or unfortunately, I'd say unfortunately, the consequences of these constant budget gaps that we need to close. If we don't close them, then services in the city suffer, and folks' jobs suffer. And part of our work is to our job is to work for the people of Burlington, and we're committed we're all committed to doing that however we can. And I don't want to lose services, and I don't want to lose good people that make a real difference in this city as members of our workforce. Yeah, I think
Can you think of one thing, like one program in Burlington or the school district or something with the hospital or the university? Is there one thing about Burlington that stands out that people in Burlington should be proud of?
I mean, there's so many. I love me some Jazz Fest. So that's on the chopping block necessarily, but it's things like that, events that bring our community together for a variety of different things. That stuff like that just screams Burlington and living in Burlington to me.
Can I add something here? Having come from Philadelphia, which is a much more diverse place than, let's say, Vermont, taken as a whole. One of the things is that it is a diverse city. I mean, going back to Christian's presentation, and I think that's really valuable. The other thing I would say is that it's also a progressive city. I think in our bones, we have a kind of progressive feeling, and that extends to the people who might not identify as progressive. There's a tolerance, there's a level of, there's a term that I've heard going around called everyday communism, where people pitch in and on an everyday informal basis will help each other, will support each other, will pitch in on an initiative that is significant, such as the initiative you're representing. And so I think that, and it's also a beautiful place. It's really attractive. So we attract people, diverse populations from outside who want to come here and be in Burlington. And one more thing I would say is that, again, having come from Philadelphia and grown up in the New York City area, there's an urban fabric here. It's really a small kind of slightly muted sometimes fabric, but there is an urban fabric in the city. And I think that's an asset for the state as a whole, certainly for the residents here. So
I mean, I could add, I mean, in a similar vein, I would say, so I've lived, so taking off my deputy chief of staff hat for one sec, as a resident, I've lived all over the country. I moved a lot growing up because of my father's work. He was in the military. And so I've lived in a lot of places, been a part of a lot of communities. This is the longest I've ever lived in a place. I've been here for 8 years now. And I have no desire to leave. Like, I've never felt, I guess, more connected to a place. And so when I think about why that is, a big part is the community here, in that it's a small enough town that, you can bump into the mayor at the grocery store. We have NPAs, we have Front Porch Forum, which is a spectacular resource, and also very funny with some of the posts and a lot of entertainment as well. But and we have a thriving mutual aid network in town. We have so now putting my deputy chief of staff hat back on, since working for the city, I mean, the city employees, the team is, I'm amazed and very impressed by the people, the public servants, the people who are working here, the people who really care about residents in Burlington. And so there is like a community ethos here that I do really appreciate, that is a part of like the small city feel, but also, as you say, I mean, there's always things going on. We have festivals, we have events, we have cultural venues, we have music. The Jazz Fest is a huge thing that attracts like incredible musicians. Plus we have all kinds of smaller venues around town that do this throughout the year. There truly is always something going on here. And it's very, a wide diversity of things. We've got great farm to table food. We've got great world-class university here. UVM Medical Center is a great medical center. I mean, it's, it does top-notch stuff. So it's like you can get some of those more urban benefits, but living in a smaller, kind of cozier place that you can really get to know and really sink into.
If I may quickly hop in, just to echo everything that's been said, there's nowhere else I'd want to live. And also with my Flynn employee hat on, Jazz Fest is the Flynn. So that's not on the chopping block, everybody. But I know that other downtown events and festivals that the city runs are. But in my professional life, I do a lot of fundraising for that jazz festival, so it better not be going anywhere. But it's a really special, beautiful place that we call home.
Charlie, thanks for that question. Okay, do we have, I think we can move on in the agenda, and the next item is Matt Price. Is Matt with us?
He's not with us right now.
Is there anyone online who wants to comment? Or I don't see a cohort online.
Do you want me to send him a quick note and see if he's planning to come?
Yeah, he was, he had the same issue that you had, with, just evening family matters, but I thought he joined us by now.
I have one question. I'm sorry, just go away your laptop.
Oh, I don't need it. I
Oh.
can still answer.
City properties for sale. What am I imagining us selling? I don't know when I'm walking around town, I'm like, oh, I'm part of that right now, and we could get part of $1 million for the city by selling that.
Oh, no, I mean, I totally hear you and I can understand why that would be a concern. It would be literally, so like I said, it would be like vacant or unused space. So like an old junky parking lot that's really not used for anything, that could be used better. That's what is being considered. Definitely not thriving public assets that we know and love. Definitely not on the chopping block. And it's a fair question.
And just building off of that, I remember from the mayor's press conference that land like that is what's going to be leveraged for these public-private partnerships. So it's not fully giving it away. The community will still be able to access those spaces in one way or another.
Matt is coming on.
Oh, thank you, Ellie.
He
Thanks
just
for
needs
reaching
the
out.
link, so I'm gonna text him email him. I'm gonna find him the link. 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully he's joining shortly.
Okay, so the same thing, when he gives his presentation, try to get him to say, why does the public want to support the schools? What are some good programs at the schools, good teachers, or good students, or what are they doing that people want to pay their taxes? Something good's happened.
You're gonna ask that, or you want me to?
I
ask
want you to ask.
that?
I have 2 school kids right here at the table. I'm gonna see if I can convince them to say what their favorite thing is about
There
their
you go.
school.
Yes.
Oh, here's
Go.
Matt.
Oh, okay.
You wanna say it? No. Oh, they're getting shy anyways. Good thing.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I am not sure if I have a video feed that's available on how I joined. Oh, hold on. There we go. I got promoted to being a panelist. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if the conference room is muted. Hi, everyone.
Russ?
There we go. I can hear you all. Well, thank you all so much for inviting me. My name is Matt Price. I am the East District School Commissioner. And so I'm happy to talk about some of the interesting things that have been happening in education around the state and in our local community. I think that would it be okay if I just started chatting, or does people have specific questions that'd be helpful for me to address?
Well, why don't you make a presentation, Matt, chat a little bit, and then we can, see
Okay.
what questions we have. Yeah.
That's great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me today. I think the main thing I want to just sort of would helpful to talk about that would be most relevant is the school budget that has just been approved or yesterday by the city council to go forth amongst the voters. Talk about how that will directly impact Burlingtonians in our area, and ask for your vote in favor of the budget on town meeting day. This year we looked at a lot of different budgetary models. Unfortunately, as is the case, it seems to be every year, costs are going up. They're largely driven by healthcare. And the massive increase that healthcare places on just maintaining level funding and teacher salaries. This year, we know that the school budget situation, the education budgets have gone up consistently over the last several years, and to have level funding would have meant close to a 10% over a 10% tax increase. And the school board and the superintendent felt that that was too much. And so we looked at some other budgetary models to come up with ways to reduce that tax ask of the citizens of Burlington. And also the governor came out very early and advocated for a $75 million buy down of the education fund this year, or support the education fund, which would further reduce the tax rate in Burlington and around and counties around the state. What this sort of ended up with is that we are going to cut about 10 teacher positions, 10 staff positions, 10 FTE positions. 4 of those positions, I believe, will come from teacher positions. This will largely come from teachers who are retiring, in that we will not refill their positions after they've retired. So I don't believe that means that any that the teachers will not have to be let go. It also reflects sort of a declining enrollment that we have seen in our school district over the last decade, that has continued over this past decade, the past year rather, I should say. So we have less students to educate, and so we are, it makes sense to have a smaller staff. There are also several central office positions that are being reduced. So all of this is to say is that the school budget is cutting. The school district is cutting positions and trying to reduce costs. It's just that the increase in costs associated with salaries and healthcare just rapidly outpace the speed with which we can judiciously and appropriately make cuts. The buy down from the governor, the estimating models that we've had has with a $75 million buy down. We are anticipating then, with that included, that the property tax increase from the education budget will be about 4.7% for the coming year. And I think that I think what I really want to try to emphasize, and if you could share with other people in Ward 8, is that that is what the property tax increase will be, or is projected to be, about 4.7%. Unfortunately, the language that will appear on the ballot will have nothing that is relevant to that 4.7%. The language that has to appear on the ballot is dictated by statute. And so it sort of talks about the per pupil cost and how much the per pupil cost has increased over the prior year, and gives a different percentage increase that reflects the increase in per pupil cost, but doesn't necessarily reflect the cost of the budget, of the whole total education budget. And so none of that, the 4.7 doesn't necessarily appear. You should also note that the 4.7 is an estimate based on a lot of other estimates, and what the actual number comes to be will determine upon a number of other factors, including what Montpelier chooses, how much money the Montpelier chooses to help contribute to the education fund to buy down the tax rate. In early December, the governor said 75 million. At his budgetary meeting earlier this week, or late last week, he said 102 million. So as that number changes, that will impact the property taxing, the education portion of the property taxes for this year. Any questions about our Burlington School District stuff specifically?
Matt, I have a question. I'm not sure that it's entirely relevant tonight to your presentation, but the governor seems to be insisting on the consolidation,
Yes.
idea, and I'm wondering, how does that fit in with what you're doing and what's happening in Burlington and what our goals are in Burlington?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's sort of, I can pivot to sort of the second part, which is we'll talk about what's happening sort of statewide with education. It seems that any consolidation or changes to the education system that will come from Montpelier will not happen and affect this coming school year. So for this school year and planning for budgetary planning, the focus was very heavily on how do we just take care of what our district is going to need for this coming year, and then as the discussions in Montpelier play out over the course of this year, we'll have to adapt and figure out what Burlington School District will look like going forward. So the governor is sort of really putting all of his elected capital on school consolidation. I say that my day job, I am a clinical psychologist, but that does not mean I'm a mind reader, and so I do not know what his thinking is about why this is sort of the thing that he is sort of willing to stake his governorship on, but it is something that he seems to be very motivated to go after. I would say that our school, the Vermont education system, is in a precarious place. The costs of education in our state keep going up. The number of pupils in our state keep going down. And we're sort of in a place where that's very much out of whack. And there needs to be some fixes to it because it's really unsustainable, especially when you look around the state and there are a lot of school districts that are very small, and class sizes and grades that have 20 students per grade. And it's just really hard to justify having all of the staff that's needed to man a building, to man a district, when that is sort of what your school district is. Trying to figure this out, there was a task force that was appointed over the summer that met to discuss this issue in depth. And it turns out that merging districts forcefully is not an easy proposition. And I think that one of the things that sort of stuck out to me from the task force work was just the geography and the topography of Vermont is not very conducive to merging districts. Like sometimes schools may look very close to each other if you look at a map, but if that map has some topography, there's a mountain between those two school districts. And it's not sort of a straight 20-minute drive to get from one place to the other. So it makes the consolidation piece tricky. The task force felt that at the end of the day, they could not recommend any particular consolidated school district maps, but instead sort of came up with some idea of a more consortium-based sharing of resources. So the big goal of all of this consolidation would be to save costs. And so rather than forcing districts to consolidate and therefore close schools, close central offices, one potential area for cost savings could be to share resources. So each school district has to buy its own curriculum. Each school district has to pay that amount over and over and over again. One alternative model could be, why doesn't two school districts or several school districts all buy a curriculum, and then they can share the materials and only have to pay the cost once or twice, perhaps, instead of having to pay it each time over. But the governor and members of the legislature seem to have rejected that idea as a possible path forward. And so it's not really clear where this is going to go. And so I guess that's where I'll pause and ask for questions or ideas. But it seems as though we are at a place where we desperately need that there should be some sort of change to the way education is funded in the state, but there is a strong impasse in how to change that and what that should look like.
Matt, I have another question.
Yeah, please.
So, as you know, I have two grandsons in the Burlington School District. And one of the things I'm really delighted about with that is that they do have, first of all, I think there's just great resource in the staff, in the curriculum, and just all sorts of things that are really feeding their growth. The other thing, of course, is the diversity. We had a discussion earlier about diversity in Burlington and the significance and importance of that. And they're being exposed to that as sort of normalcy. Diversity is normalcy rather than. So I guess the trend that we've had in previous discussions this evening has been to identify something about various features of Burlington that are attractive, significant, compelling, worth supporting. And I wonder if you could just comment on that.
I think that our school district is doing a really great job in educating a wide array of students, a diverse array of students. I think one of the things that helps our district at the moment is several years ago, our school district fought very valiantly and successfully to get to change the way that our schools are funded around the state. And that is that to make sure that school districts get equitable funding per pupil. So that is to say is that some students cost more to educate than others. Some students who are typically developing and are high achieving don't need a lot of additional school support or school resources to educate. And other students who have special education needs or other needs do take more resources from the school to educate. And to give each school a flat amount of money per student doesn't work out well. And so the Burlington School Board advocated very aggressively in Montpelier that there needs to be a formula that captures that variability in needs of students, and they were successful. And that's been the formula funding that we've received over the last year and for the coming year, which has been very helpful in supporting the needs of our school district. Under Act 73, which is the education reform plan, that funding formula goes away. And that kind of helps to sort of that would have some pretty significant impacts in how we can better support students who come from a wide array of backgrounds, who have a wide array of needs, and that's an area of concern.
Thank you.
I have a question. It might, Matt, feel free to say that's out of my purview, and I'm just asking this as someone who is curious. I know we have our new high school that was built. Are we getting any cost saving because we don't rent the mall anymore, or do we own the mall? Or what happens with the mall?
That is great. That's a great question. We do not own the mall, but we were paying a very hefty rent sum. I don't want to misspeak about what the number was, but it was a very large number per year to rent space in the mall. And we no longer have to pay. We are no longer renters. The rent is too high in Burlington, and we no longer have to pay that rent. And that would be a big cost savings. The other thing is that the cost of the high school came in under budget. It came in about $6 million under budget. And so when it opens, we won't need to pay back, and we will return that extra $6 million to the bank, and we won't have to pay debt service and interest on making those payments going forward. So that'll also be a savings to Burlington going forward. The new high school, we are very lucky that we should thank everyone that voted for the new high school when they had the opportunity to vote for it, because that high school will be the newest building in Vermont by a long shot, and will probably, given the way education funding is going, probably be one of the newest or the newest school building in Vermont for many, many, many years to come. And we are hoping that it might serve as a magnet to some students from surrounding districts. Vermont, our area, we have a high school choice, so students can elect where to go to high school. And so we are hoping that there might be some students who are from sort of the surrounding area who are traveling into Burlington, would not be in a position, might choose to come to Burlington for high school, which would improve our overall student enrollment, which would help out with our per pupil income, or how much money we get for education.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Matt. It's Merrick.
Hey, Merrick.
So kind of in line with like we asked the deputy chief of staff of the mayor's office, and Ally and I were also asked about this in regards to why Burlington, why vote to for these tax increases, and in kind of like the abstract sense. So I'd like you to put your campaigning hat on and give us and the public the wrap on like why BSD, why pay for this tax increase for our schools.
That's a great question. I have sort of a pro message and a double pro message. I don't know, there's a con message in there too. But the pro message is that I think that this budget was created very responsibly and very thoughtfully. There was a lot of discussion amongst the superintendent and the school district and the school board, and that we really saw that the doing just level funding, keeping all the positions and all the things that we had from this past year, given our declining enrollment, given the increases that Burlingtonians are facing, we could not ask Burlingtonians to pay the absolute top dollar. And so we were very thoughtful and careful in figuring out how can we reduce the tax burden. And so this budget really represents a lot of thinking and a lot of energy and a lot of effort into figuring out how to make the ask of Burlingtonians as small as possible. The second thing I would say is that schools and the school district is really the engine that drives a city forward. Vermont has one of the oldest populations in the country, and we will improve upon that. We will be only able to remain a viable state by continuing to grow our workforce, by investing in the future of Vermonters. And your school districts are the best investment, the cheapest, it's the most efficient way to spend your dollars in investing for the future of our state. And especially here in Burlington, where if we want to attract families and young professionals to come here, to put down roots, to build a community, to feel like they are truly members of of Burlington, we have to have a school system that is a draw. And I think that we have that. And I think that by continuing to support our school district, we will continue to have that and continue to try and make Burlington a place where people would want to come and set down their roots and start their families and send their kids here and happily grow up and happily have them stay and become real powerful leaders of our community in the future. That's what I would say is the reason why we would ask for your vote in March 3rd.
Fabulous answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're at time. So if there's no other business, we'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Ally, Matt. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so
Thank
much
you so
for
much.
coming on.